because I feel that everything else in my life like has to be done like so quickly. It's just about keeping up, with your work life, your daily life, and so on, that I can only really sink into this slow, or you might want to call it like meditative, or just like a thinking space, the same kind of thinking space that maybe you would get from going on like a long walk, for example.
Yeah.
So going out to take pictures, to capture images, for me is a bit like going on that long walk.
I think it's really, really cool. You also use a large format camera too. Is that primarily what you use?
So the camera itself, I think most people will be familiar with the type of camera because you've seen it. Maybe if you're not into photography, you might have seen it in films and so on. It's like early 19th century photography was all made using this type of camera where you look through the back, you're looking through a ground glass, and the photographer puts their head under a dark cloth in order to compose and focus the image. So all of that is still part of my process, except I'm using color negative film. So it's not slide film. When I develop it, I have a negative image, and then I need to turn it into a positive through the print medium. Early on in my career, I was doing everything in the darkroom still. So I was having my negatives process, and then I would print the work myself in a color darkroom using color processor and color chemicals. And I did that up until about 2009. But nowadays, it's much more convenient and much more consistent to move to the digital process. So the final prints that I make go through a process that is like negative scanning and printing using digital printers. However, I'm still printing on traditional photo paper, so color C prints. So the final result actually looks like a photograph that we would be familiar with, like in the 90s, for example. Yeah. The thing is, it's just gone through this digital process. As for why,
go ahead. Yeah.
As for why would I use this camera or do this like multi-step kind of like slow and laborious process? I really like the quality that you get from shooting from a larger negative. So it allows me to make bigger prints. But it still retains a filmic look. And part of that filmic look is, we see the grain as opposed to an image that is very smooth or made up of pixels. And the colors that you get out of color film are very different from the type of colors that you get from digital imaging nowadays. You could try and replicate it, but I prefer just to use the natural colors that tend to come out of these different brands of film that are still available.
I really like the analog process, especially when you start doing large format style of photography. And the reason I was asking you to kind of talk about that process a little bit is that when you do a process like that, it really affects you as an image maker. And so talk to me a little bit about, you had mentioned in a previous interview a little bit about this, the reason why large format photography is important to you, how it slows you down. Can you talk to me a little bit about that process and talked about how it affects you?
Yeah, this is part of the why as well. Like, why would I still use this kind of technology? That it just requires a lot of extra time and commitment and labor, and that's because I enjoy the slowness of the process. So one of the reasons why it is slow is because we're not shooting like a roll of film or a card where you can just click the shutter, really quickly. Every time you take a picture, you have like this process of thinking about, where to set up the camera, because you're always using a tripod. So where do you put down the camera? Then you carefully compose. And that's partly because you want to make a great, a nicely balanced or harmonious image, but also because it's very costly, right? So you're not going to take 2 or 3 variations. You just want to get it right in the first place. And all this process is something that, like, I was trained to do because I went to photo school in the 90s when everything was still analog and the world was a little bit slower. But I kept with it because I feel that everything else in my life, like, has to be done, like, so quickly. It's just about keeping up, with your work life, your daily life, and so on, that I can only really sink into this slow, or you might want to call it like meditative, or just like a thinking space, the same kind of thinking space that maybe you would get from going on like a long walk, for example.
Yeah.
So going out to take pictures, to capture images, for me is a bit like going on that long walk where you get into a rhythm and your body just starts working on its own. And your mind is going into interesting places. So it becomes as much of a thinking process than it is like a making process, I would say. And that's just,
I relate to that a lot.
that's just a process that suits me,
Yeah.
like suits me as a photographer. And I'm not going to claim that I'm one of those people who always like takes their time or is like a big long thinker, or that I meditate on a daily basis, because like I just don't have the time for that. But I will definitely take the time when it comes to working with the camera and pursuing a project, because that's my space to do that, to take that time.